Hello everyone, we're starting in 2 minutes. Can you please open your videos and mics? We're going to start on time in 2 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Isar Shai, honorable ministers, deputy ministers, chairmen of national committees, distinguished representatives, and participants from all around the world. I am Shai Spiegelman. I'm the Director General of the Ministry of Science and Technology of the Government of Israel, and I'm really honored to open the International Ministerial-Level Summit on Global Efforts in Fighting the COVID-19 Coronavirus. We're extremely glad that you all have joined us today, and I would like to thank you for devoting your time to participate in the summit and for your willingness to promote global scientific cooperation in the field of coronavirus research. We kindly remind you that the summit is open to international press and is streamed online live on YouTube and Facebook. I would like to begin by introducing the Israeli Minister of Science and Technology, Mr. Isar Shai. Prior to joining the government, Minister Shai was the prominent leader of the Israeli high-tech sector. He was the chairman and CEO of several successful startup companies, a high-tech entrepreneur, and a venture capital investors. Minister Shai, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shai. My dear esteemed friends, ministers of innovation, science, and technology from countries around the world, we gathered here today to share information, research, knowledge, and takeaways in facing the coronavirus pandemic challenges. Today is a special day for the State of Israel. In just a few hours in Washington, D.C., a peace agreement is about to be signed between Israel and the United Emirates and Bahrain. For us, this is a day of special celebration. And in this special day, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome all of you to this ministerial-level unique online summit, which is now being broadcast to hundreds of thousands of people around the world. This is our opportunity to get together, to join forces, to promote innovation, science, and knowledge, all of which take place in our own countries. And we are here about to share those unique takeaways here as we speak so that our governments and nations can benefit from this unprecedented global summit. I wish all of us here today a very useful and productive event. It is my turn to start this event by sharing a few of the takeaways that we have experienced here in Israel facing the coronavirus challenges over the last 7 to 8 months. As we deal with this challenge, my office, the Office of Science and Technology, has engaged in several fronts, which I would like to share with you. If possible, can we please put up the slide? So we are engaged in several fronts. On the front of research, we have embarked on hundreds of research proposals from which we have selected about 100 projects that have been funded, and most of which have already realized into material, significant knowledge and findings, which are now being shared with the public, not only here in Israel, but also worldwide. And we are going to talk about a new methodology to share that information in just a few moments. On the vaccine front, we have a number of groups in Israel which are developing, hopefully, a successful vaccine product to face the coronavirus. Two of these groups are pretty much advanced. One of them in a research facility called Migal in the north of Israel is funded by the Israeli Ministry of Technology and Research. We have visited that facility a number of times, and we are happy to report that a significant progress has been achieved. Hopefully, this will be one of those vaccines that will be able to face the pandemic when it is ready to go to market. Our government, the Israeli government, has put together a special cabinet. We call it the Corona Cabinet of the Israeli government. This is an executive-level committee that is in charge of gathering all the information, controlling the various agencies that are facing the challenges, and putting out provisions and government policies in order to face this challenge. On the scientific technological front, we have approached the Israeli ecosystem of startups, innovative companies, hundreds, or I should say thousands of companies that have put together many significant efforts and presented them to the Israeli coronavirus cabinet, to the Israeli government, and we are leveraging many of those innovations in order to help us face the various challenges. This is a nice example of how a government can join forces with the private sector in order to put together everything possible in order to face the pandemic challenges. And we also have a special team reporting to our office, the Science and Technology Office. We call it Team 19. It is a multidisciplinary advisory team that is joining together researchers, scientists, technology leaders from various disciplines within here the ecosystem of academy and industry in Israel. These people, as volunteers, have put together a very impressive team that has produced significant outcomes, some of which have been presented on a regular basis to the Israeli government. They deal with projections, analysis of data, intelligent analysis and takeaways that can help all of us here in Israel face the pandemic fronts. I would like to show you in this next slide an example of a policy that has been introduced by the Israeli government just a few weeks ago, which helps us face the pandemic challenges on a national basis. We call this the street light. It is a system of colors, and this system actually helps us deal with specific regions within Israel so as to not put provisions that would be applied countrywide in cases where it is not necessary. We have divided the country into zones where the severity of the pandemic, as it is indicated by findings of daily tests, PCR tests, are defining the color of each region where we measure those results. We have divided the country to about 300 regional geographical zones, each of which is colored on a daily basis by the average of the previous 7 days of PCR results. Red signifies the most significant alert status. Green signifies the least problematic region. And so on a daily basis, the Israeli pandemic cabinet can see the results throughout the country and then make decisions on a per zone, per regional, per color basis. As an example, the education system would be closed in a red zone while it would be wide open in a green zone, and so would be social distancing limitations. They become more and more severe as we go per zone. We have a sophisticated software system that connects through all kinds of interfaces to the various Israeli healthcare systems that deal with gathering the data. Those systems produce their results on a daily basis. They are analyzed automatically and put together into this color streetlight system, where the results then are presented to executive decision makers, and then the provisions are applied. As of the last few days, we have entered a situation where dozens of Israeli regions have entered the red zone, and this is why, as of Friday of this week, we are going to apply nationwide provisions, some of which deal with partial lockdown of the population of Israel. I call this partial because we are setting, as we speak, provisions which will let people still go to work, the economy still to function, at least on a partial optimal basis, and we're taking many provisions so to combine between the need to take care of public health and then also to take care of the economy. This is an example, one of many, which I hope all of us will share today. I'm eagerly looking forward to hear your takeaways, your conclusions from your own efforts in facing these challenges. And as we move into the next phase of this conference, I would like to announce this front of global cooperation that all of us are launching together. So we are now approaching the next phase of this conference, which will be, first of all, this upcoming declaration, and then all of us are going to sign a joint declaration. So, dear friends, ministers from around the world, we gathered here today to promote global cooperation in the scientific and technological fronts in fighting COVID-19. I'm honored to launch, together with you, our international virtual platform for sharing innovative scientific research. This website was designed by our ministry. Can we show the website, please? Thank you. We have designed this website in order to create collaborations between scientists from around the world. We are going to start with your own nations, researchers, scientists from your respective countries, and hopefully we will be joined later on by scientists and nations from around the world. They will be able to share their research topics, contact details, and team up with their counterparts around the world. Hopefully this platform will become a center point for many people, thousands of researchers and scientists from around the world, so that they are able to share information, share their knowledge, research projects, and enhance all of our efforts to face the pandemic. I invite all of you, dear friends, to share this virtual platform with the scientific community in your respective countries, and let us now, all of us, sign the joint declaration of this summit. And as I see that some of you are already doing this, please feel free to join me in signing this joint declaration, the International Ministerial-Level Summit, Global Efforts in Fighting the Coronavirus from Research to Practice Declaration. This declaration, for those of us who are watching us, those of you who are watching us, is intended to promote collaboration and to note the collaborative effort of so many countries and ministers from around the world who from now on are going to share together efforts and face together the challenges of the coronavirus pandemic. This is how it looks from here. Yes, thank you for showing your signatures as well. Thank you very much. This is wonderful. Thank you, ministers. Thank you. Wonderful picture.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Minister Shai. Thank you all for signing. We will now begin the round remarks given by each of the representatives. Please observe the 5 minutes limit as we have a very eventful agenda. First, by alphabetical order, I would like to request the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation from Argentina to present his remarks. Please, Minister. Thank you.
I am Roberto Salvareza, Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation of Argentina. It is my pleasure to participate in the International Ministerial-level Summit Global Effort in fighting the COVID-19 from research to practice, and tell you about Argentinian experience during this pandemic. COVID-19 landed in Argentina on March 3, when the first case was confirmed. On March 9, we convened at the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation a group of molecular biologists, virologists, computer scientists, health officials, and representatives of pharma and biotech companies for a brainstorming session. Our goal was to identify the opportunities that our scientists and the private sector may have to help out and mitigate the COVID-19 crisis. We conclude that we could and would develop a number of tools like diagnostic tests, alternative to the conventional real-time PCR, polyclonal antibody therapies, research on convalescent plasma, deploy genome sequence networks, create software application for mobile phones, and develop personal protection equipment for healthcare workers, among other initiatives. On March 18, we established a dedicated area in the ministry named the Coronavirus Unit to coordinate and to fund this action. 6 months later, through the dedication of thousands of scientists from our national research institution and universities, hand in hand with the private sector, the first result began to emerge. In association with pharma and biotech companies, the first groups developed and initiate massive production of low-cost diagnostic tests based on isothermal amplification method and antibody tests, which are now being successfully used in the hospital of the national health system and the private health care facilities. Also, a network of different research groups throughout the country got underway to detect coronavirus in the sewage system of cities and shanty towns in order to provide early warning of virus infection to local health authorities. Another network sequenced more than 500 genomes of the virus circulating in our country. As we speak, a clinical trial is underway to test a hyperimmune horse serum developed by scientists of 3 institutions and 2 biotech companies, intended to create passive immunization of infected individuals. Another clinical trial is being conducted to test the effect of convalescent plasma in seriously ill patients to be used in emergency rooms. Both are expected to be complete sometime in October. Computer scientists and software companies develop a software application, Cuidar, now installed in the mobile phones of millions of Argentinians for self-diagnosis and to obtain circulation permit. Our scientists developed also nanotechnology-based textile used by small companies in the fabrication of face masks, which are now being distributed throughout the country. A team of researchers from different universities and science institutes is analyzing the social and economic impact of the pandemic, providing important information to the government and the Argentinian society. Finally, Argentina and Mexico agreed to jointly manufacture AstraZeneca and University of Oxford experimental coronavirus vaccine. Argentina Mass Science Laboratory will produce the active ingredient of the vaccine. Under the agreement, at least 150 million doses will be produced for Latin American countries, with the exception of Brazil. The pandemic crisis has brought to the spotlight the capacities of our 70,000 scientists working in 20 research institutions, 100 universities, and several technological companies. We knew before the pandemic that the system could successfully carry out long-term projects such as those in the nuclear and space sectors. What we have learned now is that it is also able of going from the lab to the production, working under strong pressure and an extremely short time. This invaluable lesson is a milestone that will help us to address crucial problems of our society. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Minister. And now, the Vice Chairman of the State Committee on Science and Technology of the Republic of Belarus is invited to give his remarks.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sergei Sherbakov. I am the Vice Chairman of the State Committee on Science and Technology of the Republic of Belarus. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting us to the International Ministerial-Level Summit, Global Efforts in Fighting the Coronavirus from Research to Practice. The Republic of Belarus, like the whole world, is confronting with the threats caused by the spread of COVID-19, and we wanted to inform you that Belarus has necessary resources and sufficiently developed medicine to effectively confront the coronavirus pandemic. Within the national strategy to combat coronavirus infection, we did not impose strict quarantine measures, and it proved its effectiveness. There were more than 900 diagnosed cases daily at the peak of the pandemic, and today there are only about 190 confirmed cases. These results were achieved due to timely taken measures, namely, healthcare organizations were ready to receive patients with suspected COVID-19 infection. The work of all our clinics and polyclinics was optimized, and daily monitoring was established for the conversion of bed capacity depending on epidemiological situation and the number of people with COVID infection. Daily monitoring of drug residues, the state of medical equipment, including artificial lung ventilation machines, was undertaken. The work of 52 laboratories was organized in all the regions of the Republic with the aim of testing for coronavirus infection, as well as the work of medical teams in the outbreaks of infection. Controlled treatment at home. It should be noted that even during peak periods, the use of lung ventilation machines did not exceed 10% of their total amount. Currently, almost all hospitals have undergone a disinfection procedure and transferred to normal operation mode. An automated information system for monitoring and analyzing the epidemiological situation has been developed and implemented in the country. The main purpose of this system AIS COVID-19 is the collection, systematization, and the analysis of data on the epidemiological situation related to the spread of infection. A number of medical technologies that were not previously used in clinical practice were applied during the period of providing care to patients with COVID-19. For instance, the methods were developed for the assessment of airness of the lungs, the area of the lesion, the presence of frosted glass foci, and the degree of their spread. The methods of complex, based on tomography pictures. The methods of complex diagnostics and stratification of patients by severity in order to decide on the place of patient treatment, outpatient, inpatient, oxygen zone, intensive care was developed and introduced into clinical practice. For the first time, outpatient treatment of patients with COVID-19 was applied in practice. This measure made it possible to evenly distribute the load on the medical system. Due to the measures taken, the Belarusian doctors were not faced with the issue of prioritizing the provision of treatment. Comprehensive assistance is provided in full to all patients. A modern clinical protocol for the treatment of COVID-19, a new clinical protocol for the provision of resuscitation and medical care based on our own practice and the experience of other countries was developed and approved. New clinical approaches were implemented in the organization of infection control. Belarusian technoparks produced 3D printed protective screen masks for medical institutions, parts of the oxygen supplies and humidification system, lung ventilation devices, and so on. The correctness and adequacy of the measures taken were noted by the missions of the World Health Organization, which worked in our country in the April of this year. The goals, objectives, and principles of our automated information system, COVID-19, are fully consistent with the WHO strategy for creating a unified information epidemic disease networks. Thus, the fully full-scale work carried out made it possible to ensure controllability, manageability of the epidemiological situation for COVID-19 infection. Adequate medical care was provided to all patients in need. Optimal economic and social activities in the current situations were organized. Here, I would like to note that these results in fighting coronavirus were obtained due to our significant high-tech achievements that are not widely known in the world. For instance, our biological heart valves, original anti-tumor drugs, were recently developed. These drugs, named Cisplatin and Temodex, have no analogs in the world and are used for treatment of brain cancer. Personalized medicine is also being actively developed. The most difficult operations on complex organ transplantations, such as heart-lung, liver-kidney, pancreas-kidney, are performed in Belarus. A seamless multi-layer technology of weaving a prosthesis of a blood vessel was introduced. Belarusian-made tomographs were developed and released. These are just few examples of the array of medical innovations developed in Belarus. We would like to invite the participants of today's International Ministerial-Level Summit for cooperation and implementation of joint R&D and innovative projects in various fields. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, the Vice President of Belarus. And now I would like to invite the Secretary of Policies for Training and Strategic Actions from Brazil. Brazil, please go ahead.
Good morning, good evening. Thank you for the organizers, authorities, Mr. Shai, Israel, Minister of Science and Technology. I congratulate Israel for the initiative. Dear colleagues and researchers, in the name of the Minister Marcos Pontes, I would like to express the Brazilian respect and consideration about the effort, the global effort to contain this terrible virus, but also the authorities and researchers for developing this cooperation. I would like to express also the intention of Brazil government to maintain and increase the global cooperation in science and technology and innovation in different areas now in the post-pandemic. Since December 2018, the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation has mobilized research unities, institutes for science and technology, and laboratories spread throughout Brazil in response to the new coronavirus emergency. These institutions are working together and focusing on clinical trials and projects that will increase our understanding of the efficacy and effectiveness of vaccines, therapeutics, and clinical approach to COVID-19. In February 2020, was creating this ministry, the network of researchers and laboratories called Redvirus MCTI. This network is a committee that brings together specialists, government representatives, funding agencies, research centers, and universities with the aim of integrating initiatives to combat emergency viruses. The Redvirus MCTI function as a strategic advisory committee that acts in the articulation of research laboratories, focusing on economy efficiency and the optimization and complementary of the infrastructure and research activities that are in progress, especially with the coronavirus. This committee counts with the experts, researchers from several research unities from Brazil. And I mention here Fiocruz, Butantan, University of São Paulo, University of Campinas, and others, very important institutions in Brazil. Some of the initiatives in medicine, I can highlight the projects such as the drug repositioning in structural biology for SARS-CoV-2 and the development of a new generation of nucleotide analog to combat COVID-19. In clinical trials, we have more than 200 clinical trials in Brazil. 15 strategies is fostered by this ministry. In diagnosis, we developed more than 10 research projects and 12 strategies with the new kits to detect the SARS-CoV-2. And in vaccine, in Brazil, we are developing 10 research projects and 15 strategies. And also in pathogenesis of the virus, more than 140 research projects were implemented in this month. We implemented also the biobank, and also we are sequencing the virus in more than 15 institutions across the country. Regarding the international opportunities, we launched the BRICS call for research collaboration in COVID, and we are open for collaboration with the whole world. We invest more than 1 billion reais in projects to face the pandemic, and also for to improve our infrastructure of research to put Brazil in a new level to face new pandemics. So we are open in this ministry for new collaborations, and thank you very much. And we thank the Israel for this initiative. Thank you very much.
Secretary. And now I would like to invite the Deputy Minister of Education and Science from Bulgaria.
Hello, good afternoon already from Bulgaria. Nice to join you and to share with you our experience, our challenges, and already a little bit of pile of research knowledge in the area fighting COVID-19. Basically, today it's a very important day also here in Bulgaria. We are opening the new school year. And what fascinates me is, of course, the education and university system is quite well prepared to meet these new challenges concerning the implementation of the most important measures linked to, of course, distance and disinfection and, of course, keeping each other and our teachers safe. What is even more important, though, and we discussed today with some educators and the businesses, of course, how much important it's even in these challenging times to keep the students, the researchers, the young talents, of course, very close basically to the educational institutions and to the practice they have, because last month shows that of course we are very much advanced and I'm very proud that we very quickly switch to distance learning and distance teaching. But one of the sectors that basically now we see we should collaborate, and I'm very happy to work with you to exchange more ideas on this, is how to foster basically not only artificial intelligence and virtual reality opportunities in engineering mainly and other sectors such as medicine and health, but of course how to keep up to fostering STEM education and research. Now on COVID in the area of research, I have to say that of course the first 3 months were very much focused on keeping the safety of the people of the nation. So our consultation was on developing, of course, a system to monitor the patients, to monitor those tested positive, to keep the quarantine and the discipline. But we also developed a national portal with very special sections for the people to be introduced to what's happening not only here in different sectors but around the world. And we also developed a special website, a science portal, basically to follow all the news around the world in the field of science and technology, and of course development of vaccines, but not only some other, of course, preventive measures. And then I want to share with you that slowly, with of course quite a good unification and cooperation with our partners from Europe and around the world, in May we all open a call tackling COVID-19 challenges soon to see, of course, in the COVID vaccine, targeting new materials surface environment. And last but not least, we pushed some frontier research in the field of basically social scientists, as this is one aspect of our daily life, and that we are maybe it's not always in the spotlight, let's put it in that way. So I do hope that till the end of the year we will have already results. Our Institute of Microbiology is working with the Pasteur Institute in France. They're working on vaccine too. We are now closing soon another together with China and Belarus, my colleague. So I hope also to have some good results there. Of course, this is maybe not enough. Much more have to be done. We are considering setting up a national network of medical institutes and research organizations working in the field of health, so that to unite not only the biobanking but also some other research infrastructures that are working basically with patients' data that are working with infectious disease and other medical problems, because our idea is, of course, to focus on COVID-19 and to try to find solutions to try to collaborate the global pact tackling COVID-19. But of course, we should look ahead and basically prepare resilient health systems where, without research and innovation, finally, I hope that we all, the politicians, understood it's just not possible. Another challenging topic, I'm just flagging it out. I'm really eager to hear from all the rest. Of course, is open data. The COVID-19 opened the road much more in our way of thinking that we should change our mindset towards, of course, research results, access to data and collaboration in this field. We're working very much in Europe, setting up the European Open Science Cloud. But of course, I believe that global cooperation on this important topic is very much important. So I really want to thank my colleague, the Israeli Minister of Science and Technology, for organizing this very important event. And of course, I hope not to be the last one, but very soon that we will be able again to exchange good results and but also some better successful experience.
Thank you.
In the field.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I would like now to invite the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation from Colombia. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Israel, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Mabel Gisela Torres Torres, Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation of Colombia. On behalf of the government of Colombia, I would like to thank Minister Shai for creating a space in these colleagues for over the work came together to discuss and learn about the global effort to fight coronavirus. I also want to take this opportunity to express my deep satisfaction for the ratification of the bilateral free trade agreement between the Republic of Colombia and the State of Israel, and the announcement made by President Duque of the opening of a trade and innovation office in Israel. To put it in his own words, the agreement will help Colombia to consolidate the opportunities of the fourth industrial revolution. The fact that it sits here today as the First Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation of my country is a clear message of the importance this field has for my government and the circumstance together as today confirm the value that our field plays in society. All countries of the world have turned their gaze to the science, technology, and innovation with the expectation of understanding the coronavirus. This disease is produced the ways to treat the virus, mitigate its effect, and prevent its spread. Colombia has not been the exception among many and other effects of this disease. One of the most important has been the way in which it has shown to the great inequalities at all levels. From our minister, we have seek into ways to serve the Colombian population, and we have led several initiatives with other government bodies in understanding and treating the coronavirus. The first of the initiatives is what we call the MinCienciathon, a call aimed at financing R&D and I projects to face the challenge of the virus. This call was a quick and effective response. It's opening on March 25 and closed on March 28. In less than 10 days, we select the project we were going to the finances, evaluate and choose. It centered around 5 thematic areas. public health intervention, rapid diagnostic system, strategies for the prevention and terming of the virus, medical equipment and device, real-time data monitoring for modeling epidemiological scenarios. With about $7 million funding, 277 received and 10 June reserve benefited from this call. And done to the strategic alliance with national and international partners, the number of beneficiaries has progressively increased. This exercise was an important circulation between the private sector, academy, and government at the national, state, and local levels. We are now seeing results from the Mincienciathon. So we will start a pilot in Medellin, public transport on nanomembrane that will allow air to be filtered in buses, subway, and tram. Initially, this project was designed to manufacture personal protective equipment, but then to the opportunity to develop it further. We are seeing multiple possibilities for its use. In addition to this, we may acquire support molecular biology lab around to the country, with this over 19 labs having strengthened in different states. In 17 have been built and developed in a state that did not have this type of lab before. This will allow a state to attend not only this emerging, but also to the bank in the creating of STI capabilities for other diseases like Zika, chikungunya, malaria, and leishmaniasis. The most important thing is that many states of the country will have to the state-of-the-art labs for the first time, as well as install capacity for continuing research. Furthermore, in an effort to raise awareness about the virus and its risks, we have promoted expert dialogue and outreach strategy from the ministry. We are also looking and planning to the post-pandemic in order to adequately address the challenges that the new reality will bring. As such, we are working in the formulation of the first public policy on STI in Colombia. We will promote research, open science, and internationalization of Colombia STI. We are also implementing expert recommendations throughout to the development of an economic reactivation plan in which had prioritized technology transfer, food safety, and mental health. To close, I want to take advantage of this opportunity to invite you at all continue strengthening the ties of friendship and cooperation between our country and the trade that the door and the Minister of Science, Technology, and Innovation for Colombia are always open to work and partner with each on with that lot.
Thank you, Minister. I would like now to invite the Minister of Science, Education of Croatia. Please go ahead, Croatia.
Dear Minister Shai, distinguished ministers, dear colleagues, I am very glad to have this opportunity to participate on this international ministerial level summit on global efforts on fighting coronavirus, which is an excellent platform of examining national and international efforts in combining and combating the coronavirus. Thank you, my colleague in Israel, for the organization of this summit, because this is, I think, the first global ministerial conference with this topic. Up to now, we had some regional ones, but that's even on a much broader level. We are all witnessing the problems that we are faced in our countries, and they are more or less quite similar all around the world. This pandemic has brought a number of different questions, issues, and problems that we never have thinking about that it might happen, but unfortunately it became true. So we think we were also hoping that the pandemic and epidemic will not last for such a long time. just a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to talk with my colleague, Minister Gallant, the Minister of Education in Israel, trying to exchange the information and experience on how to organize the new school year after the experience of global lockdown a couple of months ago for the previous school year. And I'm really not happy to hear that Israel had to undergo the same process again. At the moment in Croatia, we opened schools to children, and the pupils are back in the schools for now second week. And so far, we are managing the situation quite well. The schools are not the centers of infection. Our experience is that mostly if some class has to be put in isolation is due to the teachers and not because of the kids. But anyhow, we will see what will be the situation in coming months. The situation globally in the world has also brought a number of ethical problems, and not mentioning just the economic ones, but we all together, all the countries has forced and faced a number of problems in limitation, in medical supply, equipment, and of course solidarity and responsibility among the countries and everybody who was involved in resolving this terrible situation. I must say that Croatia has participated and is participating in all the initiatives coming from the European Commission, and we are participating on and contributing on the COVID-19 research data platform and all the other platforms raised by European Union. And this global one is probably something which will be even more of everybody's interest. We are working, our researchers dealing in the field of biomedical research are dealing with different projects. Our foundation, Croatian Research Foundation, has launched a fast-track focused call, infectious diseases caused by coronavirus and the social and educational aspects of pandemic, with the budget of roughly 2 million euros. We have prepared the action plan which will enable our scientific community to prepare more quickly for new activities regarding the pandemic. Our Center for Scientific Excellence in research in virus immunology and vaccines is working on vaccine vectors at the moment, based on which its researchers are now involved in research aimed to develop a new immunotherapeutic approaches targeting SARS-CoV-2. And those approaches are based both on vaccine vectors and on monoclonal antibodies developed in their laboratories. This big and very interesting project is done together with the colleagues from Israel and Germany, and particularly in this Center of Excellence, long-lasting cooperation. Scientists in our biggest research institute, Institute Ruđer Bošković, are at the moment occupied with research with the goal of designing and implement a new improved diagnostic tools for SARS-CoV-2. Our ministry, on the other hand, is now identifying a new high potential research project basic and applied research, which is dealing or should deal with the problems of COVID-19.
Minister, please start summarizing.
I'm quite sure and convinced that I'm sure that I'm sharing my opinion with all the colleagues that only with the help of research and development and innovation that the scientists will play a key role in bringing us out from this terrible situation which affects our life in all the activities in our communities. So again, thank you very much to State of Israel, to the Israeli Ministry of Science, and to my distinguished colleague for organizing this very important meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. We will now pause the roundtable discussion and welcome our first keynote, Professor Eran Segal, for a short presentation on identifying regional outbreak and spread of the COVID-19 from a population-wide surveys. Eran Segal is a professor of the Department of Computer Science and Applied Mathematics in the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel, heading a lab with multidisciplinary team of computational biologists and experimental scientists in the area of computational and systems biology. His research focuses on microbiome, nutrition, genetics, and their effects on health and disease. His aim is to develop a personalized medicine based on big data from human cohorts. Eran, please go ahead.
Okay, hello everybody. I'd like to thank Isar Shai for the opportunity to speak here today and tell you about work that we've been doing on COVID-19. I'd like to briefly tell you about two projects that we developed to try and forecast into the future the pandemic here in Israel. So in one project, we asked the question of whether we can use very simple 1-minute population-wide surveys to predict ahead of time regions of outbreak. So these are very simple surveys that basically on your phone or on the web, in a single minute, you fill out some background information and information about various COVID-19 symptoms that you're feeling. And the idea is that by using this information, we can create a real-time map of high-risk outbreak regions, even at the neighborhood level and the city level. We could hopefully predict in advance, several days, regions where the outbreak will occur. And when the government takes various actions like lockdown measures, we can evaluate the effect by looking at symptoms. And we can also use the information to gain insights on which symptoms are more associated with COVID-19 infection, and by that also improve our approach to who we test. So we deployed these surveys in Israel, and they've actually been used by millions of individuals here. About 5 or 6 million times they've been filled out, and they've been given us quite some insight. So here I'd like to share with you maps that we built. This is after the end of the first wave. So yellow indicates not a lot of symptoms, and more purple colors indicate a lot of symptoms. And you can see how in 1 month between the end of the first wave and the beginning of the second wave, this map changed its colors, indicating that the data reliably shadows the pandemic situation in Israel. And so when we started to use this, when we compared individuals who actually reported of testing positive for COVID-19 with the actual symptoms that they received, that they reported, we could see that there were several symptoms. And in particular here, I'd like to highlight loss of taste and smell, which stood out as symptoms that really differentiate those who test positive from those who test negative for COVID-19. And loss of taste and smell was very remarkable because there was a 35 times more probability, higher chance that if you report having loss of taste and smell, that you would test positive for COVID. It was much more distinguishing than any of the other symptoms, in particular more than fever that we all measure. And actually, based on this finding here that we had at the population level, this symptom was also introduced into the screening methods that our Ministry of Health actually uses, and in the beginning of June, this was introduced as part of the screening methods. But not only does it help us to identify individuals, but also when we looked at the overall patterns, here you can see reporting of loss in taste of smell as a function of time in blue, and actual COVID-19 cases identified here in Israel in red. And you can see that the two lines are very similar, but there's a shift. In fact, the reporting of loss of taste and smell symptoms precedes by about 9 days the appearance of daily cases that are confirmed. And so when you shift the curves together, you can see that they are one on top of each other, meaning that by using these symptom surveys, which cost nothing and basically can be deployed over the internet, we can gain information and predict ahead of time how we are doing at the country level, but also how we are doing at the city level. And this has helped the Ministry of Health and other health officials here in Israel throughout the pandemic. We also put together an international consortium. There's a paper in Nature Medicine, a white paper that we published on this. There's 12 countries right now that are part of this consortium that is led by us. We were the first in the world to deploy these types of surveys. And with these countries, with researchers in these countries, we are now discussing how to work and how to analyze these types of methods. Okay, I'd like to shift gears and tell you about a second effort that we have been working on, which is in trying to predict the number of critically ill patients that would occur in hospitals. Here is the graph of the actual number of critically ill patients at hospitals throughout the first and second wave of the pandemic. We're at the midst of the peak of the second wave, and you can see how this number is climbing. We're over 500 critically ill patients at the hospital. The limit here in Israel is thought to be at around 800, so we are approaching this limit, which is why the government is now going to deploy in the next few days a nationwide lockdown. But obviously, it is very critical for decision makers to not reach a situation where there's no capacity in the hospitals, to know ahead of time how many critically ill patients we expect to see at hospitals. And so we developed a model that basically starts from identification of positive cases, taking information that the Ministry of Health has on positive cases. We model the process of them becoming critically ill at the hospital, and from the hospital we model the situation in which they are either released and recover from this critically ill situation, or they move into another state of being ventilated. This is important because then they stay on longer at the hospital, or unfortunately some.
I'm really sorry for the technical issues. The presentation was recorded and we will send it to you by email, and I'm really sorry. And we will now continue with the second round of remarks. I would want to invite the Deputy Minister of the President of Cyprus to give his remarks. Again, sorry.
Yes, dear colleagues, there is no doubt that this pandemic has shaken the entire world to its core, testing the efficiency of our economies and societies, and in particular, challenging the performance of our healthcare and welfare systems. At the same time, it has become more than obvious that we must improve both our capacity to respond to such crises and our resilience to absorb future shocks by investing in research and innovation. Countries around the world approach the pandemic independently and combated COVID-19 at state level. The global nature of the pandemic and the need for collective action, nevertheless, render international research and innovation, cooperation and collaboration as an imperative in order to first accelerate information gathering and exchange, and second, initiate target-oriented research and innovation activities, and third, deliver research findings to markets in a shorter period of time. COVID-19 has inspired technology innovations that are already changing our world The health crisis has undoubtedly accelerated digital transformation and stimulated technological advancements that support us all, while also allowing for business and commerce to grow. Initiatives like this summit today, promoting synergies of innovative scientific research in the field of coronavirus, to produce tangible and effective outcomes aimed at magnifying the impact of innovation. We must share information, innovation, policies, ideas, and expertise, and identify constraints of our local innovation ecosystem, interconnecting and strengthening our ecosystems through the exchange of best practices, resources, intellectual capital, and skills will benefit all parties, for it will support economic recovery and pave the way for sustainable development at global level. Our actions should target first and foremost the need to develop vaccines, treatments, and diagnostics through the use of cutting-edge technologies in the field of medicine. We should work towards creating opportunities for our scientists to collaborate across different countries in different continents to seek for solutions in the three key areas mentioned above. Thus, we consider today's initiative as an important instrument to this effect. It is in this context that we welcome the sharing of information through the virtual platform, since it is highly significant to make available all information on COVID-19 studies at real time. One of the lessons learned from this pandemic is that in order to accelerate results, cooperation with the private sector needs improvement in order to better translate research innovation outputs into tangible benefits for our society. We should share our experiences on how to mobilize private sector through public-private initiatives in order to maximize the financial resources devoted to research. Another lesson is that investment in human capital development is key to tackling current and future crises and contributing to the development of skills for a more resilient society. Supporting, therefore, international mobility and training of researchers and enterprises should be among our highest priorities to keep our human resources competitive and focused on COVID-19 tackling internationally. Without any doubt, to effectively address this profound global crisis and maximize the efficiency of technological and innovative solutions, close collaboration and greater solidarity among countries is imperative. We are thus very supportive of all efforts made through this common declaration for coordinating further our research and innovation actions to tackle COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. And I would like now to invite the Minister of Technological Innovation and Digitization of Italy. Please go ahead and provide your remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank the Minister of Science and Technology, Isar, Shai, for convening today's summit and giving us the opportunity to discuss global issues such as the pandemic of COVID-19. I think that a global fight requires a global effort, and therefore we welcome the joint declaration that we signed today. The first country in Europe to experience the social and economic consequence of COVID-19 pandemic, Italy witnessed the introduction of key top-down and bottom-up measures to counter the pandemics. A 25 billion euro package was set out in the law decree Cura Italia, and the translation is Take Care of Italy, and it contained measures to strengthen the national healthcare system, to protect jobs and incomes, to support credit supply for businesses and householders, and to suspension of tax and provision of tax incentives. A key component of the response has been to facilitate smart working arrangements and distance learning in schools and universities. We earmarked 1.6 billion of euros to start connecting school and SMEs through ultra-fast broadband technology. We also set up a team of data scientists and experts, completely volunteer, that analyze based on data the virus impact on social, economical, and healthcare field. And then we developed 3 initiatives. The first one, we established a close partnership with the private sector with the initiative called Digital Solidarity. And it was a public call to the private sector and association to ask them to offer digital services for free to citizens during the containment measures. Another initiative was done together with the Minister of Economic Development and the Minister of University and Research, and we launched an initiative called Innovation for Italy. In this case, we invited companies, university, public and private research center to experiment innovative way to prevent, contain, and manage COVID-19. The third initiative to identify the best technological and digital solution ready to be applied, we launched a fast call on telemedicine and data analysis. Inside this call, we developed Immuni, that is the Italian exposure notification application, which is fully compliant with the European GDPR, the regulation around data protection in Europe. And on this specific initiative, I wish to announce that yesterday, September 14th, the European Commission has just set up an interoperability gateway service linking national application across the Europe. So the European Commission has started test runs between the back-end servers of the official apps from different countries, Czech Republic, Denmark, Germany, Ireland, Latvia, and Italy, and a newly established gateway server. So with this initiative, users will only need to install one application and will still be able to report a positive infection test or receive an alert, even if they travel abroad. Of course, not private information will be handled by the gateway, and only the arbitrary keys generated by the national applications. For what concerning international cooperation, Italy is a founding member of the GPA, the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence, that aims at ensuring that artificial intelligence is developed in a responsible way and that respects human rights and democratic values, even in the COVID-19 fight. Concerning European level, Italy would receive 209 billion euros of the EU Recovery Fund to support our country to fight the consequences of the epidemic crisis. But we have also a great opportunity to relaunch our country. By allocating 209 billion euros of the Recovery Fund to Italy, the European Union is making an enormous effort to help to reduce the economic damage of COVID-19 epidemic. But at the same time, this is a crucial opportunity to make our research, production, training, and service to better respond to international competition challenges. In my portfolio, just to close my speech, in my portfolio, we are pushing the simplification and the digitalization inside the public administration with some measure and some project, from the access to the digital services with the single digital identity, to create one single channel where the citizen will find all the digital services of the public administration, to promoting a national cloud system to protect our country's technology and our data. And finally, we introduce the right to innovate that allowed company, university, startup to experiment in our country new project for a limited period with a simple authorization. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Minister from Italy. Our next speaker is the Parliamentary State Secretary to the Federal Minister of Education and Research of Germany. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thomas Rachel, Parliamentary State Secretary for Education and Research in Germany. I would like to thank the new minister in Israel, Isar Shai, for taking this initiative to organize this virtual meeting, since international exchange and global cooperation are fundamental to dealing with COVID-19 pandemic and future crises. And so it's a great pleasure, at least virtual meeting the new minister from Israel today. I would like to point out the fact that the crisis shows us how important international cooperation is across borders and ideological differences, since the crisis has really an international dimension and is too big to be solved at a national level. An international virtual meeting is a good starting point to open a new chapter in the international cooperation, and it's a pleasure for me to take part in it. The German Federal Ministry of Education and Research responded rapidly to the COVID-19 pandemic with a series of support activities for research, which in financial terms altogether have passed 1 billion euros. Already in March, we launched the first call for COVID-19 research projects, which covered all types of innovative research, from basic research over clinical trials to social science. We support in parallel German vaccine developers in speeding up their development process and in ramping up their production capacities. We spend there 750 million euros. In the international vaccine development process, we are making an additional high investment in the International Vaccine Initiative, CEPI. We spend here 230 million additional. In August, another funding call was published to support development and innovative medical products and diagnostic to fight COVID-19 and other infectious diseases. In addition, all university hospitals in Germany created a tightly connected network. And finally, we are considering launching another research call in which still existing research gaps are addressed. Our country, Germany, is highly committed to joint global efforts to fight COVID-19 pandemic, and we consider vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics to fight the pandemic as a global public good. Germany has actively contributed to international research coordination within GloBit under the guidance of the WHO, the World Health Organization. With respect to international research cooperation, our ministry focuses its activities on large regional and multilateral initiatives for COVID-19, such as CEPI, our European research program, and not on bilateral activities. As already mentioned, we are one of the main investors in CEPI, and we were already for a long time convinced that CEPI can serve as a blueprint for multilateral R&D cooperation. We are thus satisfies that CEPI is now one of the leading organizations in the access to COVID-19 tools accelerator. The BMBF, our ministry, is also committed to multilateral joint clinical trials, for example, the World Health Organization Solidarity Trial and the EU Discovery Trial. Education, research and innovation are central to the socio-economic dimension of coping with COVID-19 pandemic and future crises. We need to learn from the crisis and become more resilient as a society, and we need to learn about the mid and long-term impacts of the corona crisis for the economy, for the society and political action. The BMBF is currently strengthening an integrated response across the disciplines and the international departments, both in funding policy and in scientific advice mechanisms. Perhaps one of the few positive things of the pandemic is that it provides us with numerous lessons to learn. We will learn where we were well prepared and where we were not well prepared. We will see whether our response succeeds or whether we fail. It is thus central to the future global cooperation in research on COVID-19 and other pandemics that we learn these lessons jointly and that we get to a common understanding how to proceed in future. The next pandemic will certainly come and we will be better prepared. So let's work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Germany. Our next speaker is the National Secretary of Science and Technology from Guatemala. Go ahead, Guatemala.
Thank you. Have a good day, His Excellency Isar Shai, Minister of Science and Technology of Israel, Ms. Shai Spiegelman, Director General of the Ministry of Science and Technology of Israel. Good day to all the senior science and technology officials from the countries that accompany us. In Guatemala, the Presidential Commission for Attention to the Emergency COVID-19 established its work access a line of scientific research where the two priority investigations are epidemiological study in Guatemala through the measurement of immunoglobulins, a study to make the genetic characterization of the disease in Guatemala. In addition to these research topics, there is a large number of investigations that are being led by universities and research institutions, both public and private. In Guatemala, the development of the disease was being monitored and cutting-edge technologies were incorporated in the field of medicine to combat the coronavirus. One of the first attempts was the manufacture of ventilation equipment to support the treatment of people with coronavirus to prevent a shortage of said equipment. More than 10 manufacturing initiatives were raised in the country when it was detected worldwide that ventilators were not the best option. Diving suits began to be developed in the country to support the medical treatment of patients with coronavirus. Currently, they are being manufactured locally in the country. At the same time, some hospitals are using convalescent plasma to treat patients with critical illness from coronavirus, and it's being done in other countries around the world. An important use of technology to combat the coronavirus was the emergence of telemedicine services since they have allowed the medical treatment of people to continue despite the initial confinement and isolation measures. These telemedicine services has been implemented to monitor patients in the areas of general health, specialties, and psychological. Guatemala has a general technical cooperation agreement with Israel with the purpose of strengthening technical ties and promoting reciprocal knowledge in the scientific, administrative, and professional training fields through scholarship programs, training for public officials, agricultural development, scientific research projects, among others. For Guatemala, it is important to continue strengthening the ties of friendship and cooperation as manifested in the last visit to Guatemala by the former Israeli Science and Technology Minister, Ophir Akunis, when he met with the Vice President of the Republic. In this sense, we have been actively participating in the webinars promoted by Masha to be able to spread to the knowledge through them, and that they reach more Guatemalan people. Regarding the national funding opportunities for global scientific cooperation, SENACIT has the International Strategic Project Support Line InterCTI, which provides financial support to develop basic research projects, applied technological development that respond to calls from international funding agencies worldwide. As national counterpart for member institution of the National Science System and Technology, SINCIT, in order to take advantage of an channel resources from external cooperation in scientific research for national, regional, or global impact. Beneficiaries of this line are those institutions, entities, and bodies of the public, private, and academic centers, individuals and legal entities, regional and international research and development centers that carry out basic or applied research, technological and experimental development in consortium with academic entities or public and private research that apply to international organizations through their calls and that address issues or national interests. As mentioned, the government of Guatemala created the Presidential Commission from Attention to the COVID-19 Emergency COVID, whose objective is to help, recommend, facilitate, advise, and assist in this action. Mechanisms, measures, and protocols implemented by the Ministry of Public Health and Social Assistance, as well like other dependencies of the executive for the prevention, containment, and mitigation of the COVID-19. This commission is led by prominent Guatemalan doctors and scientists. The National Secretariat of Science and Technology was the first government institution to take proactive actions to combat the disease by setting 2 innovation challenges for the search for projects that could help combat the effects of the disease in the country in the months of March and April. The 2 challenges launched were COVID-19 Open Innovation Challenge and Challenge Defeating COVID-19. The objective was to bring together innovative proposals and projects from various actors in the Guatemala scientific community, chambers and the private sector, as well as university and academic sectors, in order to address some of the problems caused by the health crisis in Guatemala. The projects had to be based on science, innovation, and technological application to find solutions within the framework of this emergency. The selected projects include inclusive telemedicine platforms, as they incorporated Mayan languages, digital platforms for economic reactivation and education projects for children, adolescents, and adults.
Secretary will start to summarize, please.
Okay. Finally, we can mention virtual seminar project launched by SENACIT, outlined as a meeting point for society with Guatemalan scientists and exhibitors who are experts in specific topics, who through digital communication platforms can access relevant and interesting content and local application. They are aimed at a varied audience, depending on the theme to be dealt with in each activity. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Secretary, for your remarks. I would like now to invite our next speaker, the Deputy Minister of Public Innovation from Honduras. Go ahead, Honduras.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Jose Mario Reyes. I am the Minister by Law for e-Government in Honduras. I would like to start by thanking the State of Israel for inviting us to be part of this great event. This is another example of the great diplomatic relations between Israel and Honduras have built over time. On behalf of President Juan Orlando Hernandez, I want to reiterate the compromise of the government of Honduras to keep strengthening the relations between our 2 countries. As we were hearing today, the world is rapidly changing due to COVID-19 pandemic. Governments must adapt to these changes in order to make sure citizens are capable of continuing with their lives, even if that means working from home. Today, the Honduran government is making efforts to expand the connectivity of its citizens with the goal of reducing digital gaps and creating an environment that promotes the use of information technologies in different areas of public administration. Digital government allows for the construction of the government that is more transparent, safer, and closer to its citizens, which leads to the innovation and human development in the framework of the pandemic. In Honduras, we just created a few months ago the e-government office. However, we had a significant advance in short amount of time, including the creation of projects related to telemedicine, e-health, in alliance with social security institutions. Citizenship has the opportunity to report any symptoms related to COVID-19 and being oriented to receive medical assistance in a specific medical triage according their locations. And experts can define pandemic borders. This facilitates the management of the pandemic from a geographical approach. Virtual education is quite important nowadays for us. We are implementing classrooms with the technology necessary in order to promote the classes to all childhood of Honduras. E-wallets, which optimize the processes of conditional cash transfers to affected social sectors by the pandemic, and a unique online portal for citizens and businesses services for improving the time of response the government during this pandemic. Among other initiatives, such as automation of processes, for instance, brand businesses registry, credit requests for SMEs, national authentications documents, business operation permit, now we have automation for them, and digital driving license check for the police. There is still a lot we have to do. This pandemic obligates us to think out of the box as Honduras public administration. We are very grateful for the support that we have received from good and important institutions like Inter-American Development Bank and United Nations Development Program. They were an important strategic alliance in exploring best practices for electronic single window of government processes that we have as government. We look forward to continue working with the Ministry of Science and Technology in order to promote innovation and the use of new technologies in Honduras. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Deputy Minister from Honduras. Our next speaker is the Deputy State Secretary for Innovation, Ministry for Innovation and Technology of Hungary. Thank you, Hungary, and please go ahead.
Thank you, dear colleagues. First of all, thank you for initiatives. Exceptional times like this require exceptional commitment from all of us, and coordinated efforts are needed at the global level to address these unprecedented challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Strengthening and deepening cooperation with our partners are essential in this regard. It is our common interest and responsibility to find appropriate responses in mitigating the pandemic's socio-economic impact. The crisis we all had to face has clearly proved that our approach to consider science, technology, and innovation as key contributors to address major economic and societal challenges in appropriate one. It has also been confirmed that different scientific disciplines and technological areas should be combined to tackle the challenges efficiently, from medical and pharmaceutical research to mathematics, engineering, material sciences, and digital technologies, all underpinned by social sciences. Collaboration between academic and business sector is needed more than ever. The Hungarian government has been allocating 8.3 million euro for COVID-19 related research activities. 24 R&D and I projects are supported financially to handle the epidemiological situation. Fast-track financial decisions have been taken to support the prevention, detection, and rapid responses to the spread of COVID-19 through projects focusing on the prevention of the infection development of anti-coronavirus candidate drugs, support clinical testing and trials, the mathematical modeling, analysis and forecasting of the spread of the epidemic, or developing respiratory machines. These projects are implemented by collaborating universities, research institutes, and industrial partners, and we hope that the results will effectively contribute to the protective measures against the COVID-19 pandemic. The exploitation of the results of these projects goes beyond the impact on handling the pandemic. It is expected that they will lead to innovations that may be applied in other areas in the longer term. As an additional measure, we also launched a call focusing on the startups, innovative SMEs, to develop innovative and rapid approaches for responding to COVID-19 and deliver quick results. Under this call, citizens were also encouraged to share their innovative ideas related to COVID-19. Hungarian experts and researchers actively participate in EU high-level R&D coronavirus task force and its operative subgroups, and our government contributed the coronavirus global response pledging organized by the European Commission by committing 750,000 euros for vaccine development purposes. These days, on the eve of the second wave of the epidemic, we are supporting the initiatives of the healthcare industry with 95 million euros, in addition to further support and strengthen the innovations that have already begun, and also we should tender of 90 million euros to support new forward-looking initiatives. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, the Deputy State Secretary from Hungary. We will now have another scientific pause. Hopefully it will work better this time, and you can hear the comments. It should work better. I would like to invite Dr. Kira Radinsky to discuss the topic of artificial intelligence-driven clinical triage, the next digital healthcare backbone. Dr. Radinsky is the chairperson and CTO of Diagnostic Robotics, where the most advanced technologies in the field of artificial intelligence are harnessed to make healthcare better, cheaper, and more widely available. Dr. Radinsky was selected in 2013, was named one of MIT's Technological Review 35 Young Innovators Under 35, and in 2015, Forbes included her as 30 under 30 rising stars in enterprise tech. She's extremely interesting, and I welcome her speech. Kira, please go ahead.
I wanted to share with you a little bit about my journey in this field of data science. For the last 2 years, we've been obtaining 150 years of news articles, billions of tweets, and millions of web searches, and trying to construct what we call the ultimate causality graph representing everything humanity knows. The way we build this graph, we mine all of this free text information. Our system would do natural language processing, identify actions on what was performed in locations, all of this using natural language. Would then identify causality terms that we as humans use to convey when we identify when one event causes another. So in this case, this event was mentioned in the news to cause oil spill of Singapore. This eventually ended up in the largest causality graph, 300 million nodes, billions of edges, representing all of the experiments humanity have done and all of the knowledge we've obtained from this. During my work in Microsoft Research in cooperation with the Gates Foundation, we've been asked to apply this causality graphs to predict different pandemics. One of the first ones we were asked is to predict Ebola. Ebola didn't happen many times in humans, but it didn't happen several times in animals. And based on our causality graph, we identified that every time it had exactly the same pattern. And I love the story, it's very biblical, but it turns out that every time this pandemic started was because when humans were greedy and looking for diamonds and gold. A system knows, based on the causality graph, that when people are looking for diamonds and gold, deforestation is about to happen. The system knows based on past experience that when deforestation happens, animals are going to migrate, but specifically one type of animal, the bat. And indeed, the latest Ebola outbreak started from a 3-year-old child who ate an uncooked bat bushmeat, killing more than 2,000 people eventually. We decided to also extend our causality graph by identifying correlations in data. We're asked by the Gates Foundation to also try to predict cholera outbreaks. Cholera is a waterborne disease, so it's not surprised that it's caused by storms and floods. In our causality graph, this knowledge was already obtained. We then applied machine learning methods to identify which type of storms are causing those cholera outbreaks. And the system identified that if there's a severe drought, the probability of those droughts to cause storms and that eventually will cause cholera is extremely high. It was based on just a few cases from Angola, 6 cases since 2006, all of them had exactly this pattern. In Bangladesh in 1960 till today, 19 significant cases of cholera, all of them had exactly this pattern. But this pattern didn't happen in many other countries. It didn't happen in Israel, it didn't happen in Germany. So what is so special about Angola and Bangladesh? Maybe the water, maybe the sewage system. You're all thinking about this behind the scenes, but for this you need human knowledge to do this type of abstractions. So we gave our system this human knowledge to try to identify what is so special about Angola and Bangladesh. We'll let it raise different types of hypotheses, like is it due to the ethnic groups, population density, government types? And the system identified a correlation only with the GDP, this is more poor countries, and with the low percentage of water. This was extremely surprising because cholera is a waterborne disease that we would expect that if you have lots of water in the country, that it would have higher probabilities of actually spreading. In April 2011, our system is reading the following news article from the BBC that Cuba is facing its worst drought for 50 years. It's starting to alert about the high probability of cholera. But cholera didn't happen for more than 130 years in Cuba, so we did not pay too much attention. But 2 years later, we already forgot about this news article. But the system picked up from the Reuters about tropical storms coming next to Cuba, give a high probability for specifically cholera for Cuba. We started working with the different aid organizations, and indeed, a month and a half later, the first cholera outbreak in Cuba in 130 years. Cholera is a disease that kills 100,000 people every year, but it's very simple to treat. If you get clean water in time, mortality rates drop from 50% to less than 1. So we started applying the system with the different aid organizations as an aid to try to predict those pandemics. We then decided to go to more in-house problems. How can we leverage all of the clinical experience humanity has archived to try to build better digital triage system in order to reduce the time people are waiting inside the emergency departments? We had access through the healthcare system in Israel to 76 million medical records, additional 60 billion coming from the United States. And using natural language processing, we applied our system to extract answers to clinical questions and then correlating them with what doctors did. After training this retrospectively, we started applying prospectively those systems in the emergency department. So today, instead of just waiting 3 hours or 6 hours inside the emergency department, you would come in, the system would ask you a set of clinical questions, predict the urgency of the patient, which tests they need to be doing, and actually build automated workflows to reduce the time people are waiting. We then decided to take this system of triaging and this time offer this from primary care to help navigate the patients to the correct location. Eventually, till 2030, we're gonna have 3.8 billion people without access to primary care. And this is what's gonna cost eventually 8 hours inside the emergency department, even in Western countries. So what we started working, we work with 75% of the HMOs in Israel. We integrate to their clinical flows, ask a set of clinical questions from the patient. Behind the scene, the system can predict whether this patient might have a urinary tract infection. Above a certain probability that the doctors in the HMO decided, it would send a urine test to the patient. Instead of for the patient to go to the doctor physically, then go do a urine test, then go do it. The system is actually navigating the patient to the urine test. Once the result is received, Our system reads this, updates the probability for the diagnosis, and then the doctor can remotely prescribe. We're talking about end-to-end flows for digital healthcare from home. And then COVID happened. We were asked by the Minister of Health to expand our clinical triage system, this time working with all of the HMOs in Israel and helping the hospitals as well. The input for the system was mostly coming from our clinical triage systems, but also with collaboration with research institutes like Weizmann Institute and Technion as well. What we provide the Minister of Health is an epidemiological map showing where COVID is right now, but also how it's going to spread in a week from now. The way the system worked is very similar. Instead of asking about the specific clinical condition like a headache or chest pain, we extended this time to ask about COVID, where we knew very little about COVID at that time. We would also predict on a personal level which patients might have a high probability for COVID in order to close chains of infection as fast as possible by automating care management flows. The system would work the following way. Patients would either get a link being monitored remotely, or before getting any type of service from the healthcare system, being asked a set of clinical questions. A system based on more than 2.5 million people answering our questionnaires would predict the probability for COVID for this specific patient. And then different care management flows would be taken. 25% of the population of Israel answered this questionnaire. We had completion rates ranging from 83 to 89%. We would eventually give for each city the probability that they have COVID right now and how it's going to look like in a week from now. On April 4th, we allowed once to publish our predictions. We predicted 3 cities, Migdala Emek, Tiberia, and Ashkelon. The Minister of Health has decided to verify this. And indeed, those were the main 3 cities. Since then, on a daily basis, with collaboration with the research institutes in Israel and with the army itself, we're providing the reports for the Minister of Health to make better decisions about where to send the COVID tests, which cities to build lockdowns, so we can build differential policies as well. And this is an example of 2 cities. This is how much symptomatic load they had at each time. A system predicted here that an intervention needs to be taken. Almost no intervention was taken, the symptomatic load continued growing. Here, on the other hand, the intervention was very severe and it almost flattened the curve. When we only started the pandemic, we knew very little. It was known that only fever, maybe cough is causing this. By applying natural language processing on different answers of patients, we were one of the first ones to nationally deploy the system and change the triaging for a loss of smell and taste. The system would then learn also combinations of different terms. For example, it will learn that dry cough and fatigue, extreme fatigue, which is less well known even today, is much more correlative for the disease than plain fever, which most national triage systems would actually use. The system today is also deployed with collaboration with Deloitte in Odisha, India, and the state of Rhode Island. But the goal is eventually, and this is what we can actually put from this COVID situation, is how can we build much more automated digital flows? How can we automate much more? And we see in the scale of a pandemic that this one is crucial. We do not need to wait for the next pandemic. We can build those using different artificial intelligence systems that can improve the lives of every person on Earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kira, for the very interesting presentation. Before we continue to our final remarks, I want to show you once more the international website we have discussed, where we want you to upload global research on coronavirus. We have from a few countries already. We have a lot of research online from Israel, and we invite you to share research on coronavirus in our global website, where everyone from the world can see and learn on the very interesting research done already on science of coronavirus. Thank you. We will now return to the final round of remarks by our representatives. I would like to invite the President of the National Council of Science and Technology and Innovation from Peru. Please, welcome to give your speech.
Dear colleagues, on behalf of the National Council for Science, Technology, and Technological Innovation of Peru, I commend the initiative of the government of the State of Israel through the Ministry of Science and Technology to host this international ministerial-level summit. In a context where the COVID-19 viral outbreak has endangered human health, industrial activities, income levels, trade relations, and economy, science and technology has been at the forefront to manage the crisis and propose global health solutions. For the sake of contribution to the efforts to contain the epidemic, our institution, CONCITEC, launched 2 calls to fund innovative science and technology-based solutions to tackle COVID-19. We have funded 50 initiatives from public and private research institutions to develop projects such as rapid PCR test, surveillance and e-health mechanisms, different kind of platforms, vaccines, treatments, among other initiatives which will allow to collaborate with the crisis by developing our indigenous capacity in a context where worldwide should work together. Consequently, Peru is developing rapid molecular COVID-19 tests whose results can be available in less than 30 minutes. Treatments with camelid's nanocorps to neutralize the virus, in-house respiration and ventilation devices. For the first time, we are developing this kind of devices. We have produced information about the molecular epidemiology characteristic of this virus, as well as new disinfection processes for surfaces, among other science and technology-based solutions. Peru is aware of the crucial importance of early detection and providing medical assistance to prevent the deterioration of patients' condition and deploying medical teams to monitor the health situation of patients. In this sense, the keynote that we have heard has been very important. In this difficult context, we have to make much more mature our efforts in this kind of fight against a pandemic. Beyond the public efforts, we provide financial relief to millions of families across the country. The participation of civil society has been crucial to support governmental efforts and developing facilities such as oxygen plants throughout the country in a situation where the shortage of this essential element causes major problems for us. Hence, private-public partnership has been crucial for an integrated response and effective response. Understanding that a long-term solution to this crisis is inextricably linked to the development of a vaccine, Peru has been implementing a threefold strategy in this front. On one hand, we are contributing to the conduction of phase 3 tests of foreign vaccines in our country. Secondly, we are part of COVAX and Solidarity efforts, international efforts. Thirdly, we are bolstering our domestic capacity to produce a Peruvian vaccine. In this endeavor, we have 2 candidate vaccines. One of it has the possibility to be administrated orally. Our geographical, climatological, and demographical diversity in Peru and the availability of groups of highly qualified scientists with an important experience in clinical trials presents an advantage for our country in these 3 fields. Moreover, we are deeply aware that as a consequence of the crisis, the financial constraints of science and technology budget might reduce the public allocated funds. Therefore, it will be very crucial to create synergies and foster international cooperation to ensure the financial sustainability of research across the globe, with an emphasis on developing economies. We consider that strengthening cooperation in the current circumstances would certainly prove beneficial for finding solutions which could benefit the international community and building science-based bridges of understanding and friendship between our countries. Furthermore, given the prominence of international cooperation in the field of research, open science has the potential to bridge science and technology gaps across borders. This is why these kind of meetings are so crucial. Open science is a fundamental enabler for the world scientific community, allowing to access to research data, publications, science and technology-based collaboration, and other available mechanisms which are conducive to bridge the gap among scientists in developed and developing economies. We strongly believe it is vital to foster policies within which ensure that data obtained through the use of public funding can be shared with the world scientific community. We also consider that it is crucial to promote open science, training for researchers, and create legal frameworks and infrastructure which facilitate the access to primary data and software. In a context where COVID-19 is causing major damages and disruptions worldwide, open science could serve as a catalyst of integrated research to respond to the current crisis and future ones. From Peru, we vow to continue working together with the international community to provide science and technology-based solutions to the immense difficulties COVID-19 has caused. Sure in the knowledge that capacity, talent, and willingness of our scientists all over the world is stronger than the challenges we face. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for the representative from Peru. And now I would like to invite the Secretary of State in the Ministry of Science and Higher Education of Poland. Please go ahead.
Mr. Shai, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you, and congratulations. It's a very good idea. I do hope it will be really fruitful. The Ministry of Science and Higher Education of Poland initiated legislation supporting universities and scientists during pandemics. In March, we also established a COVID-19 related special coordinating team for higher education and science system. We prepared a special extra budget, about 100 million euro, just to support the new research on the field of problem of pandemic. It was used straight away from the ministry and through our specialized funds agencies which are under our supervision, the National Center of Research and Development and National Science Center. I would like to present some examples of groundbreaking research undertaken in Poland with the support of the governmental budget. First, on the beginning of knowledge about the problem, the Institute of Bioorganic Chemistry in Poznań of Polish Academy of Sciences prepared published special PCR tests for testing patients, and actually there is already for production about 100,000 tests per week. The second idea, which was conducted and still is realized and enlarging, there is a SONAR anti-coronavirus project, which was prepared by scientists from Nęcki Institute of Experimental Biology of Polish Academy of Sciences, and it's together with cooperation with the Faculty of Mathematics of the University of Kardynał Wyszyński in Warsaw, and also the other medical schools in Poland. It's idea of the pooling-based SARS-CoV-2 testing, which gave the opportunity for screening how widespread the virus is within the given population, especially when there's a large population residing in closed area, for example, the companies, factories, or universities and schools. And we realized this first project in the population of medical school students and medical staff of our universities. And then I'd like to say a few words about the special project. Also realize thanks our support, the Circa Internet system for support X-ray diagnostics. With help of artificial intelligence, the program analyzes the image down to the smallest particles, and then there is prepared the algorithm to support the diagnosis using the X-ray pictures and the CT X-ray pictures.
I hear we have some connection problem with the final remarks of the minister from Poland. So I would like to invite the Director General, Ministry of Education, Science and Sports from Slovenia. Thank you for the minister.
Thank you very much for the word. Distinguished ministers, dear colleagues, good morning and good afternoon at the same time. I would say that this first sentence proves how important is today's meeting, and how important it is to act globally with each other and put together the efforts we already done in our national levels. At this point, please let me stress that personally I'm convinced, and COVID-19 situation also proves, that we need in a way a creation of the global research area in which frame we could systematically and effectively tackle global endangering phenomena. On the Slovenian national level, our researchers are currently conducting more than 30 research projects directly or indirectly linked to COVID-19. In June, the Slovenian Research Agency has published a public call for applications to increase funding for research programs related to the COVID-19 pandemics. The project will result in support to the government and to the specific sectors in development policies and other policies of public interest, which is indeed needed to improve the safety and health protection of the population of the Republic of Slovenia, and also we believe could contribute even broader. The knowledge will be also crucial to adopt effective, safe and proportionate health protection measures. Slovenia is of course internationally active in many thematic projects related to COVID-19. Based on the invitation of the Swiss National Science Foundation, the Slovenian Research Agency has started co-financing bilateral and trilateral research projects on COVID-19. As part of the global project Folding at Home, which also includes our University of Maribor, researchers study the formation of proteins and their impact on various diseases using the most advanced simulation models and computeral techniques of distributed computing. The Slovenian National Supercomputer Network is also involved in these efforts with its infrastructure. In addition to supercomputers located at research institutions and the newly created National HPC Center, which is also a part of the EU EuroHPC initiative, is also significant. This is the largest public prototype supercomputer in Slovenia, which contributes about 3,000 computing cores to the projects related to the COVID-19 research. We are also planning a big investment in the National NMR Center, where 1 gigahertz spectrometer will be installed. This will increase our research capacity not only for COVID-19, but also for other research activities in the field of medicine, but we believe also broader. Slovenian research institutions, research institutes and Center of Excellence have started developing a vaccine against COVID-19 in cooperation with national and international companies, research institutions and universities. the main goal is to develop a platform that would allow for the rapid preparation of vaccines if similar epidemics occur in the future. Slovenia also participates in the ERA versus Corona action plan, in which the European Commission is pursuing the realization of the 10 identified actions. And I would like to say that majority of them are focused on the coordination, sharing of information, and working together of different national systems. And we believe that today's meeting is one of the next steps for the further collaboration also in the global level. The EU will also support the vaccine research with an additional 100 million euros through the co-financing of the rapid development and global production of COVID-19 vaccines together with CEPI. And just for the end, what we learned from the COVID-19 situation up to now. It's important to stress that one country alone cannot address the pandemic efficiently. Certainly, we should not blame poor bets for this situation. It is a situation which would happen sooner or later, but there remains the question of proper reaction of all players. There are many fake news all around us nowadays, and because of that, we learned that the scientific evidence and proper communication are of key importance. New ethical questions are arising and are more and more important even before than ever before. And certainly the decision makers will have to address these questions and adopt appropriate and highly ethical decisions, which will not follow the game of geopolitics and economic benefit, but will focus on humankind as a whole. Thank you very much from Slovenian side. That's all.
Thank you, Slovenia, for the important comments. I would like to ask the Minister of Science and Innovation of Spain to give his remarks.
Hello, good, well, as my predecessor said, so good afternoon, good morning to different people all around the world. I'd like to thank Minister Shai for convening this meeting and for the invitation to participate between the different authorities for science and innovation in different countries and to share our experiences. This pandemic has been a stress for our systems, and it is still going on. So truly, it is important to have meetings like this because we have all been asked to react extremely quickly, and therefore there has been very little time to actually share between each other what are the better practices that we have used. This is an interesting summit. I believe we have had, as every other country or science and innovation authority in the world, we have been confronted with several truths, like, for example, there's no short way to develop research capabilities, that the only thing we can do is to use existing capabilities that have already been experienced in the past when it comes to this kind of situations. And therefore, we need to keep fostering our basic research such that for the next moment that it happens, then we will have strong science systems and we will be able to respond much better. Another probably another lesson that many people have already experienced is that this has been a really exercise of finding a much faster and much more effective way of making the transference of knowledge between research, innovation, companies, and actually using to the public. Because what we were asked at the beginning in March or April or whenever everyone started working hard is provide solutions. And from research to innovation to use to the public, we have learned that our systems are probably not geared to working fast and working very effectively. In our case, we allocated early funds already in mid-March for research. We allocated approximately 30 million euros to research in many different areas. And this has obviously been provided, as we said, to the areas of research in which we already had experience, and we already had a very areas of research in which we already had capabilities previously. There were dozens and dozens of clinical trials. This is one of the things that Spain is quite at the forefront in the organization of clinical trials for all kinds of different ways of prevention or therapy. We provided also a research project in novel diagnostic technologies. There were several areas in which we already could lay back to knowledge that was already existing. We also fostered research projects on animal models for experimentation. So there was a fast put in practice of some lines of genetic manipulation of animals in order to have better animal models. And of course, like everyone else, probably vaccines. For example, in this last area of vaccines, there was a decades-long experience in developing vaccines for tropical diseases like Zika or so on in some research establishments, and also one other research group had many decades of research on coronavirus itself. So there was the opportunity to foster an increase on the speed of research in this area. We also used scientists who were quite advanced in developing vaccines for veterinary use. And those are like the three areas in which we have been able to foster development that has quite a good hope of being effective and being eventually put to use in this health problem that we have. I have here 12 projects that are vaccine projects that are being funded by national funding, and 5 of them already have a prototype and have started trials. So far, we have not had any clinical trials on any of the vaccine prototypes that have been developed from this prior knowledge that we have in some with vectors that are not yet in clinical trials anywhere in the world, but we are quite hopeful that 1, 2, 3 of these projects will be in clinical trials before the end of the year. So we'll add to the already many projects that are already starting in clinical trials, but as we all know, vaccines developed quite quickly. Well, we need to have a broad spectrum of those in order to have the highest probability of one of them or 2 of them working as we need to do. Of course, this has, as we said, been together with about 25 million euros of grants that we have provided to companies in order to speed up really quickly in speeds that we have never seen, and probably you have had the same experience, the transfer of knowledge from research to actually put into the market.
Minister, please try to summarize. We are
okay. So this is all the experiences that we all have had. We have tried, like every other country, to be somewhat independent in somewhat of these areas, simply because the market in the world was so close that it was very difficult. Also on face masks and everything. I would like to only stress that we are quite proud of our serological test that we have done that is representative of all of the country, and we have done in 3 waves in summer, providing basically the only reliable number for prevalence of the disease in one whole country. So let's hope that the pandemic ends soon, and that we will need to find a way to meet again and put together in a more sedate, in a more calm way, what are our experiences, and see if we can learn from each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We share your hopes. And last but not least, our final remarks from the Minister for Higher Education and Research from Sweden. Please, Sweden.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to this summit. Thank you to Israel to arrange this meeting. I'm very honored to be invited. I would like to start by giving you a general picture of the situation in Sweden and then come into research and universities. But our approach to the pandemic has sometimes been regarded as quite different from others and other countries. But Sweden shares the same goals as all other countries to save lives and protect public health. We are working with the same challenges as other countries: the scale and speed of the virus spread, the pressure on the health system. We've been using the similar tools as you do: social distancing, protecting vulnerable people and at-risk groups, testing, and reinforcing our health system. Fundamentally, Sweden's measures only differs from other countries in 3 regards. We are not shutting down schools for younger children or children's care facilities, and we have no regulation that forces citizens to remain in their homes or to wear face masks. Instead, we have recommendations that everyone are obliged to follow. And people have taken a great deal of personal responsibility and followed the recommendations. This has been crucial to limiting the spread of the virus and helping the healthcare system to cope. But life is not carrying on as normal in Sweden. Combating the virus has had effects on the Swedish economy, and unemployment is rising. So the government has taken several measures to lessen the economic effects and to stabilize the economy. The whole of the Swedish society has come together to deal with this crisis, from regions and civil society to neighbors. The government has made all the necessary resources available to combat the spread of the virus. At the same time, forceful measures have been taken, such as short-term layoffs to mitigate the impact on jobs and businesses. Small businesses have been supported with a crisis package to relieve costs and to compensate for reduced revenues. People who lose their jobs have been given greater security and opportunities to retrain, which is particularly important for those who already had small financial margins to begin with. Many people in Sweden are, or not only in Sweden, in the world, are yearning for an end date, a specific date when life can return to normal. It is not yet possible to set such a date, but in Sweden, the number of people receiving hospital and intensive care treatment has reduced, and we are reducing the spread of the virus. And I hope this trend will continue. Overall, the reduced pressure on the healthcare system due to COVID-19 means that Sweden is now entering a better situation. But our measures for reducing the spread of the virus, they have been designed to be implemented for a long period of time if necessary. Swedish public health response is firmly based on expertise and lesson learned. The decisions taken by the government are based on advice from our expert agencies and international expert organizations. Actions are regularly fine-tuned and adjust in response to developments on the ground. We can also quickly implement stricter measures if necessary. When it comes to universities and upper secondary schools, they've been closed during spring using distance learning, but have now somewhat opened again in a very careful manner. And I think universities in Sweden have taken a great responsibility and managed this shift to digital and distant education quite well. And they are managing quite well now going back to more campus-based education, even though many students still have distance learning. Regarding research to tackle the corona crisis, the government has provided the Swedish Research Council with an extra 100 million crowns to finance corona-related research. And the council have also launched a call for more long-term funding of research in virology. Sweden has many excellent research groups within this area, groups that have joined forces with other researchers and companies all over the world to address the virus. This has been key to the quick development of medicines and vaccines that are now well underway. The government has also commissioned the Research Council to provide more support for clinical trials about COVID-19 and to coordinate Sweden's part in the European Commission COVID-19 data platform, and Sweden will sign today's declaration. Huge efforts will be needed to safeguard jobs and welfare after the crisis, and to handle this, we need to take and make large investment in education and research. Today, the Swedish government have presented our research budget for the coming 4 years, and we will put in 13.6 billion Swedish crowns over the coming 4 years in Swedish research. And we are preparing to put the bill on the next Swedish Research and Innovation Bill to the Parliament this autumn with this amount of money in it. By investing in knowledge and by international cooperation, we will be better prepared when the next crisis hits society. During the COVID-19 crisis, the vast majority of people all over the world have taken a great deal of responsibility for themselves, for the fellow human beings, and for the healthcare system. This cohesion, everyone in society taking responsibility, will be necessary for a long time to come, even now as we in Sweden are entering a better situation. And we need to work together internationally to take us together through this pandemic. Thank you very much for inviting me to this important meeting.
Thank you, Minister, for your important comments. I would like to ask Minister Shai to give his final remarks, but before that, I would like to thank you again for your participation and contribution for this very successful summit, may it be one of many, and global partnership will start from here. I would like to ask you, if you can, to open your cameras and videos for the final remarks when we can all see you and farewell nicely. Thank you, Minister Shai, for your comments.
Thank you, Shaili. Thank you for moderating this summit. Dear friends, I personally have learned and have taken some significant remarks, and I'm taking some of the takeaways from this important summit all the way to our special coronavirus governmental cabinet. I believe that we have all shared significant pieces of information, have learned quite some significant conclusions from your knowledge and conclusion sharing in this summit with people from around the world. We see this summit as an opening for a broad scientific cooperation between our countries and others that couldn't join us today, but will definitely be invited to future conventions and discussions. And as we said earlier, the website, the digital platform we are launching today will be open for anybody at the global community who would like to share knowledge and research with us facing the pandemic. Let's stay in touch as we move forward to all of us to the next phases of facing the coronavirus challenges. The website, the digital platform that we've launched today, will be a platform for scientific cooperation between all countries around the world. Please do encourage scientists in your countries to submit their research, to share their knowledge with all of us. This is important, this is very useful, and will help our governments face the upcoming challenges. I would like to thank all of you for participating today, for your enlightening comments, for your thoughtful remarks. Together, we will beat the coronavirus pandemic. Wishing you, all of you, from here in Jerusalem, Shana Tova and Shalom.